As we fade into silence.
Yeah, fade into silence, and I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I found out some pretty dark news or unhappy news before we got. It's not dark. I'm overblowing it. Glow got canceled. Okay. So they were gonna have
Glow.
A season 4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there will not be a season 4.
I thought there were only 2 seasons. Have I watched 3 seasons and somehow I didn't know it?
That's the
or
thing. Season
was
1
season 3 not out yet?
Tend to blend into each other because season 1 was here's our idea and it kind of ends with them making the show. Season 2 is them making the show to it getting canceled, and then season 3 is the Vegas show.
Okay, you know what? You're absolutely right. Season 1 and 2 blended together in my mind then.
I actually just went through this with Amber, so.
That's funny. Yeah, I guess that's interesting the way that does work out. And yeah, I'm trying to remember it, but now that you mention it, I can remember the division. But you are correct. Seasons 1 and 2 really felt like part of a continuum because we did watch them all while they were coming out. I really liked it. Zara really liked it. It's nice to be able to share that. There's not a lot of wrestling related stuff that we share. In fact, there is zero. Yeah. So that was a good thing to have.
I think Glow was that last push that was like, hey, Amber, watch this show. All right, now come watch wrestling with me some more and see if you can really get into it now. And now she's like, Amber is in there with me. She's in Mark territory just like me.
I wonder how much of a gateway it's been for people. It really, because it was such an effective show, and I mean, in a lot of ways, it was the best of both worlds. Because I don't know, there's nary a wrestling fan out there that didn't like it, but there are tons of non-wrestling fans who did like it very much, and there wasn't so much wrestling as to be oppressive, but there wasn't so little as to be not part of the show. So I thought they struck a great balance.
Yeah, they've had a lot of really cool things to put together into one great show. But we're here to talk about Heroclix. And they haven't made Glowclix yet, but WizKids, if you're listening, it's an IDW comic now, too, so...
Is it? Nice.
It is.
Yeah,
well,
that counts.
They've had miniseries. One was... you know what? We're getting too much into it. Yeah, we're here to talk Heroclix, oddly enough, but less and less is coming up about that. But this is the week we talk about the metagame as a whole and Worlds, what to expect out of Worlds, and if you're participating, and how best to prep for it. And I could go on at length about any certain number of things, but we'll kind of go through it as we come along. Myself and Tom were just talking about it. We're going to be changing the schedule of the Metal Lab coming up because things are kind of ramping up again with COVID, and as a result, even locally, we've gone from being able to play to we're gonna have to kind of play on a hiatus. So I'm losing out on those experiences. And then after this week, we have Worlds. Next week is Canadian Thanksgiving, so we're gonna be skipping that anyway. And that's probably the best place to move into a bi-weekly schedule. So every other week, the Metal Lab will be live on Mondays, just so we can have some time to collect information and kind of just blast it all. Once previews start coming out for X-Men, I'm sure we might ramp up again, but there's not as much as we like there to be to talk about. So, but as far as the channel is concerned, I'll try to get something out there in the week for you guys if something kind of comes along. But
yeah, I mean, it's subject to the world right now, right? And it's the world of Heroclix too, and there's no point trying to stretch ourselves too thin to come up with something to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes we have some weeks where we're shocked that we got like an hour and a half, 2 hours out of.
That's the reality of it, man.
So I'm actually kind of pulling up one of the first things I want to talk about before we get into Worlds to kind of excite ourselves for the future Heroclix. Because there is some pretty cool stuff on the horizon. And these aren't like full-blown previews. All of these are actually slides from, I'm guessing, an Alliance online kind of conference.
Yeah, I would assume, like, without knowing anything more about it myself and talking absolutely out of my own backside, I would say it's probably the sort of thing you might otherwise expect to see at the actual Worlds event. Like, though I know we've been to a few different instances of Worlds in which they'll do kind of the what's coming up previews and they'll give out a few slides, and they do that at other shows as well. Like whether it's been Worlds as an independent entity or Worlds at something as part of a larger. Game fair or expo of some sort, and that's the sort of thing that we're seeing here, I believe.
So as well, if anybody has been keeping up with these, I'm not going to be displaying them in necessarily any sort of order. So bear with me if you're like hardcore, full in the know about all this stuff. I have the order kind of backwards from what we posted on Facebook. So that said, let's get it all up there.
Dude.
And the first thing that they wanted to point out, and of course this already makes next to no sense because I messed up the order, like I said. Either that or I missed a slide. Either way, one of the big highlights is going to be figure looks. They're putting a lot of work into what the figures look like. For those of you not aware, when X-Men comes out, there is a 23% increase in the MSRP on the set. That's a lot of money. Like, as a Canadian, that's a lot of money because we're spending what Americans are about to start spending on packs and bricks of Heroclix. So,
right.
Welcome to our world. But one of the things that they did highlight with that price increase is models are going to increase in size, and they're going to be working on the details and scales. So the image I have here is actually, it's one of the after images, and it's a picture of Apocalypse and Gambit and Psylocke all next to each other. And you kind of get a feel for just Apocalypse is a little larger. We can speculate in the fact that this Apocalypse model is a Prime. Because there's green on the dial.
Well, then,
but
the Prime is typically. I guess it's not always. I was going to say that Prime is typically kind of just a repaint of the regular, but that's not always true now.
I know they changed that up with Ghost Rider. We get to go. Hold on a second.
Yeah, that really could be something else. It's hard to know.
But that might be over speculation. Either way, they are going to be working on detail and scaling, so they're probably putting a little bit more plastic in there, as well. My understanding is that there's going to be a massive reduction in the number of repeated models. So, and people are like, oh, that's just a resculpt. Apparently they're doing away with that altogether, which is more costly, as I think I've said in the past, where it's like, hey, they're saving money by doing this. And, everybody says stuff about it, and it's like, well, the price is about to go up. And a lot of those same voices are like, oh, I'm not buying it, it's too expensive now. Like, all right. Anyway, moving on. Team up cards are coming back for X-Men, and they specifically highlighted the Storm one, and actually gave the whole Storm dial. So she's an 85-point figure with 7 range, 2 targets, indomitable, and she has 2, 4, 6, 8, 7 clicks of health, and toughness across the first 5, which is probably the toughest Storm I've ever seen them make. Marauders, Quiet Council, X-Men, and Pirate keywords, so Spider-Man family, ignores characters for a line of fire, and she's got a team up: Bishop, Callisto, Emma Frost, Iceman, Kitty Pryde, Kate Pryde, and Pyro. If one or more of the listed, I'm going to kind of paraphrase. It says, if 1+ or 1 or more listed friendly characters are on the map, Storm and the listed friendly characters gain aquatic and modify speed +2 if they occupy water terrain. If 4 or more are on the map, during your turns, printed hindering terrain is water terrain instead. And then it kind of explains how team-ups work. She has a Krakoan revival trait. And
have we talked about that on this show before?
I feel like we talked about. We either did or didn't. I don't remember.
Definitely one of the two. Yeah. Krakoan Revival, if memory serves correctly, is in fact the one where when you would be KO'd, you do give up points.
Yeah.
But you can basically return to your first click, and your opponent gains a bystander of their choice. And there's a number of very strong bystanders they could have. So you gain the opportunity to not lose the piece at the expense of giving your opponent still the points for the piece as well as an additional member of their force, which is a really weird effect, and it's a one I need to see in action because offhand it seems like it might be too broken or not good enough. So I
Yeah.
don't know yet.
It's hard to say because it could lead to grand scale. It could lead to games where you just get overwhelmed no matter how much you do damage. Because if they have Krakoan Revival and you're killing things but they're coming back, let's say you score 150 points, but they still have a full team that they're coming at you with. So, her other trait, my best, no, the main bolt is still charging. When Storm hits with a range attack, after resolutions, give a hit character a Lightning Rod token. When Storm targets a single character with a Lightning Rod token with a range attack, she modifies damage +3. At the end of your turn, remove all Lightning Rod tokens that weren't given this turn. And then, of course, we see the dial. It's a what you see is what you get dial with an Indomitable Storm. Whoa.
Yeah. I'm confused by this. At the end of your turn, remove all lightning rod tokens that weren't given this turn.
So, okay.
So,
turn 1, I shoot you. I put a lightning...
yeah.
Turn A, I shoot you, give you a lightning rod token. A lightning rod token was placed this turn. So we go to the end of the turn. That one was placed. Nothing goes. Then the next turn, I want to try to shoot you with this. And let's say I hit you for the +3 damage. At the end of that turn, that lightning rod token was already there. So the first one, so that goes away. But it looks like the new lightning rod token is going to stick around as well. So...
yeah, I was just trying to figure out, like, is there any way to give her colossal stamina? Because that really seems like the play, if there is some source for that.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got someone that could change her size to colossal, so she get it that way or something. I mean, even without it, you've got to be able to basically hit the first attack when you're clear, so that the next turn you can make sure to follow up.
Yeah.
I mean, the other alternative is try to figure out a way for her to make range attacks for free.
Or leadership
either one
rules?
seems like it would be pretty potent. Yeah, leadership will do it. I'm trying to remember whether the Waldo arms was that a free attack or a free close attack?
I gotta double check that. And HC Rums is open on the window I have this in.
Okay, I can check it here.
All right, cool.
That seems like an interesting interaction if that's the case. But so yada yada. Incapacitate is free or make a close attack. Okay, so there is no ability to make an attack just on attack.
Now,
all right, fair enough.
X-Men isn't unknown for leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, Cyclops is usually the guy that has it. So,
in fact, she's got it herself. Just team her up with herself.
Exactly. Yeah, if she's not unique. Oh no, but you wouldn't be able to use it. Oh, the team up card isn't doing this. Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What do you think of the piece for 85 points?
It's the toughest Storm, but it's still not tough. You know what I mean? It takes a lot of damage to kill the Storm. You have to commit 7 damage to this character, but it is an 85-point Storm. It is. I'll say it. It's the toughest glass cannon, but it's still made of just thicker glass, I think.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, yes and no. I mean, what I was going to say is that it's remarkably consistent. Like, the funny thing about that Krakoan revival trade is the idea that you go back to your first click, but almost all the clicks on this dial look the same, with the exception of the last 2. So it's not like, she's on click 5 and you've got to dump your efforts into KOing her and she goes all the way back to her first click. I mean, it's a lot more damage you have to do, but it's not like your stats are jumping way up. What a weird, like, it feels like an old-fashioned dial design with powers that don't change for so many clicks in a row. I agree with you. Very tough for a Storm. I am used to seeing Storm not be able to take a hit.
Yeah.
So kind of cool that 8 damage is needed if you don't have a way around toughness to take her out of the game right off the bat. And you may not even be able to do that with Krakoan Revival in play. An energy explosion is cool. You can only give 1 hit token a lightning rod. If I'm reading it right, I also feel like she could energy explode a group, give one of them a lightning rod and then try to follow up on that one. And since she's got improved targeting characters anyway, then she can really double down on that. So that's it's a nice effect.
It is.
I think there's potential there.
There's potential. It's definitely a win more. Like, I hit you. All right, next time I hit you, you're going to feel it.
Yeah.
So, I really hope they don't introduce a way to give free range attacks with her, man.
There may already be one. That's the nature of this game that we're living in.
Yeah, there might be something we're not actively thinking about right now. So, anyway, we're going to move on next. So team boosters are going to be a thing. I think they've already kind of been a thing, but who knows? Maybe they'll occur more often. What they have pictured, of course, is the cover of the Marauders, the pirate ship motif. So you have a kind of a pirate, Kitty Pryde, bishops on there, looking less, piratey. There's a Mr. Sinister, White Queen, and an Iceman. They got a comic book cover on it. A couple of the characters are not present who are being pictured, but if it's a thing that's going to happen, it's going to be neat for sealed, I think. As long as the teams are good. You could get the Triplicate Girl pack in Superman Legion of Superheroes, but did you want it? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I mean, I wonder what the benefit of the perceived benefit of it is. Because it's obviously not for like a sealed setting, so it would make sense to me if it were being released in conjunction with like a new OP series, and maybe that was the idea, right? Because you really have no idea. No one was expecting COVID, so for all we know, maybe this was going to be connected with an OP setup, and that just never had a chance to happen.
Or perhaps, and this is a recent development in Magic the Gathering, there's something called draft boosters and set boosters. Draft boosters are the standard Magic the Gathering pack, but the set boosters don't follow the rules of the draft booster because they're not meant to be drafted. They're meant to be opened, and you should get more booty in it, as it were, or more bounty. There's a higher probability of rares or pretty cards, and like they kind of reduce the amount of cards in it, but increase the value of the cards. Perhaps that's another thing that's a good thing that they're going for. And we don't have the information because a lot of this is slides that were meant to go with a presentation, so we weren't part of that presentation. But we move to, and they show another example of a team booster with the X-Force with Beast, Hope, looks like X-Man, Domino, and Marvel Girl. So it looks like a thing they're gonna. It could be just a thing they're pushing. So. And then they highlight some figures from the upcoming Wonder Woman 80th anniversary set, which I know Amber's hyped for. I think Alexis is going to be hyped for too, but she's too much into her phone. And what we have pictured, we have Wonder Woman kind of foregrounded. We have Harley Quinn in Wonder Woman's outfit. We have a Batman kicking.
Yes.
It looks like Cerise is the next one there. I'm not up on the characters. I might be wrong. And then another Wonder Woman, because it's a Wonder Woman set. Expect that. A Green Lantern. I'm not up to date on my DC. I apologize. She's got kind of like a cord going into her back. Shorts and big hair. It might even be a male. I can't tell by the proportions. Cheetah is pictured. Looks like an Amazonian warrior. Superman. Looks like a possible Star Sapphire Wonder Woman. And I'm guessing that's Artemis, I want to say. Either way.
That would be my guess, but I'm not an expert.
Yeah, apologies for the DC fans. I'm bad at this. I'm not great at the Marvel
I wonder.
stuff
I mean, here we have more Superman and Batman stuff. I mean, is it impossible to believe that we could be getting yet more shifting focus characters for these guys? They're just going to keep peppering that through forever.
I mean, I hope they don't hope they don't fill a Wonder Woman set full of shifting focus Superman and Batmans. Like I would like.
No, it was Elseworlds where they gave us one each of a shifting focus Batman and Superman that supplemented the existing ones, and I just thought that was an interesting choice.
Maybe.
This gets me thinking.
Yeah. It's a possibility.
But it's possible.
I think all of this is speculation right now.
The sculpts certainly do look good. I mean, to the previous point, And we don't have to get into this because it's no point really digging too deep. The MSRP is going up, and I think that there are those who would say they're trying to produce a better quality product, and that's going to cost more money. And there are those that say they want more money and they don't feel like they shouldn't give us nothing, so they'll argue that the product's going to look better. The truth is probably somewhere in between. And the fact of the matter is, I haven't seen a major increase in this game. Like, it's been progressive increases, but I don't think it's even kept pace with like cost of living increases. So I'm not shocked to see MSRP finally go up in a meaningful way on this game. So, if that is going to come hand in hand with better product, then certainly it is looking like the product is pretty cool from what they've been showing us so far. We'll see how it pans out in reality, but I'm pretty happy with how everything looks, even though it's never been the reason I play the game. There's nothing wrong with a good looking fig, and all the ones they're previewing here look pretty good.
And to kind of add to things, I think the last MSRP I remember going up was just after War of Light, but then the Canadian dollar tanked around that time too, so...
Right, yeah. It's hard to keep track of when Heroclix is more expensive and when our dollar sucks.
Yeah.
So, you're right.
And that's the thing,
mixed up.
The price won't go back down when our dollar goes up.
Yeah, so I appreciate your use of the word when.
Right. I am hopeful. It's been up and down in my lifetime. So, all right.
Yeah, for sure.
They also highlighted a couple of accessories for Wonder Woman. So it looks like her sword, her winged armor, and the lasso of truth. So, pretty cool.
Yeah, more special objects. That's cool with me, man. The more, the better. I think that they only do us good by giving us more stuff that we can build with in this way, and because they often come equipped to characters or with options to use them out of your sealed boosters, and it gives you a little bit of extra fun in sealed. More objects are a-okay by me.
They also have kind of like this raised Wonder Woman symbol on under the feet of this Wonder Woman. So I don't know if that's going to be a chase level or that's going to be something we can expect. In the previous one, it looked like there's a lot of kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Collateral damage style scenery being added to the figures, which is probably part of things. So
yeah, almost all of them really.
Yeah.
Maybe that's kind of part of the gig.
Mm-hmm. I remember that was like the whole gimmick of the collateral damage set.
If they were switch clicks, it would also make sense too. And we are seeing, we have seen an increase in switch clicks in some cases. So, switch clicks always work a little better with the removable base. And if the removable base is itself dynamic rather than just a little piece of, half moon plastic, then cool.
Yeah. All right. So there's the Future Foundation is going to be a set. Boy, man, they got the Fantastic Four back, and they just hit the gas pedal on it.
Yeah. That's fine by me.
And the first picture I have here is, in fact, awesome alternate versions, which includes Doctor Doom in Doctor Strange's outfit, the Thing dressed as Doctor Doom, an Invisible Woman with a cape that I can't quite... It's not Doctor Strange's cape in my experience. It doesn't look like that, but I'm not sure. Did you kind of catch it?
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
I know the picture, but I don't know what it's a picture of. It's just, I've not seen it.
Either way,
I wonder.
There's two
figures
what it's in this about. Picture. I must have.
Yeah, they're Doom themed by any reasonable stretch. I mean, that's cool. I wonder what they are. Like, is it going to be a chase theme? Is it just going to be a sub theme within the overall set? It can't all be Future Foundation, although we're going to get to it. The slide that has like the bunch of them, boy, are there ever a lot, as there should be. That's what made the Future Foundation such great reading for so long, is the idea of the extended family of Fantastic Four. But boy, there are plenty. I can't wait to do more for the new Fantastic Four. I'm so excited. It is already my favorite mechanic, and we're about to get an injection of new ones.
Yeah. I want to apologize. I was covering Doom Thing's face, and I want to apologize if I messed up anything on the right-hand side of the screen. I adjusted things for a figure preview and didn't realize. Yeah. So, all right. Next up. Okay, so this one was the new design philosophy slide, which also happens to show Future Foundation, Franklin, Doctor Doom, and Sue Storm, Invisible Woman. So we're going to have the
Yep.
captains and sidekick mechanic, which we're going to see in the next one. They're looking to implement or increase alternate win conditions and easy to pilot common figures. I think that easy to pilot common figures has always been kind of the goal, or they've always been kind of one.
Yeah, I think they're more highlighting. They're more highlighting it as something they're committing to, perhaps,
Yeah.
as opposed to something that's new. Because I agree, it's been the case for a while. But if they're really committing to it, then I guess good on them.
So alternate win conditions. What would you like to see out of that? Because we've had Black Swan. I think is really the only one that we can say you win the game under these circumstances. What do you think we're going to see? Some kind of like a team that might be fetch a bunch of objects on a map, or a team that might be focused on, or are we just looking at something like Black Swan, where it's like, hey, you pull off this nonsense on a full moon and good luck, you deserve the win.
Yeah, I mean, I really obviously we don't have anywhere near enough information to make an educated guess.
No.
So the only guess we can make is a wild stab. And if I had to make that wild stab, I would maybe stab in favor of it being related to the point about captains and sidekicks.
Yeah.
Like maybe there is something about identifying your sidekick characters, and if all the captains get KO'd, then there's another way to win or something. I mean, admittedly, it immediately makes me kind of go, what? Like it's Heroclix is based on a fairly basic foundation. Figures have points, and you score those points en route to trying to score more points in order to win. So it feels like there's no very natural way to segue off that notion. So you basically have to go in a new direction, and it's not like I think that what's in there now is not serving the game. So I'm very curious, but I really would have a hard time speculating.
I want to say kudos to them if they managed to make it both doable, interesting, and fun.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Sure.
I have played Warhammer, and I have played HeroClix, and I have dabbled in other point-based miniature games. And the second you step out of beat my opponent's team to death, I tend to try to find out if I can just win by beating my opponent's team to death. So,
Fair point. A lot of board games are like that, right?
Yeah.
Like they're the objective to win is either the defined objective, or there's just the beat everyone, and they don't really highlight it, but it's often a viable strategy.
We'll see. The next one, though, highlighted the captain mechanic, and it was with Invisible Woman, who's an uncommon and strictly has the Fantastic Four keyword. There's no dial to go with this, but it was just a trait. I consider them all my children. Once per turn, when a friendly sidekick is targeted by an attack, you replace that sidekick's defense value with Invisible Woman's printed defense value. So it looks like a sidekick will be defined by a trait similar to this, and this appears to be she's got captain written on the top of the card. Sorry, so it's going to be like the secret identity, where the secret identity showed up on the top of the card. We're going to be looking at the captain and sidekick kind of hitting the top of the card, I guess, as well. So it's
interesting. It's basically like a once per turn defend.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fine way to introduce the mechanic. It's not snazzy and fancy, but at least it's easy to understand.
And this is the uncommon level one. Who knows what we might get in higher rarities, right? So,
right, of course.
I'm going to briefly go off of the slides, though, because I got to find the ones that would have got us super hyped. And those were because apologies for the stumbling here. I thought I had them all, and it turns out I was incorrect. Where are they? Where did they go? I thought, no. Uh-oh. Where did all... What was it just that one with the Future Foundation, or was there more of the Future Foundation? I thought there was more for some reason.
There is more. There's at least one slide that shows, it's got to be a dozen figures. Because they did do a slide in which they highlighted the basic members of the Future Foundation, which is to say the FF, along with Spider-Man and Awesome Andy, which is just I'm so happy that Andy the Awesome Android is in this set. I'm very excited for that, and all the kids. And this is the one I talked about, the fact that there are so many on this particular image. Is that there's got to be a dozen or more people dressed up in their white Future Foundation setups with like the Moloid kids and like Artie and Leech are there, as well as Herbie and Franklin and Valeria. There's a lot. It's funny. I remember when I first got into the game years and years and years ago, around Secret Invasion. I remember buying an extra Fantastic Four starter pack and getting an extra. Remember the Spider-Man on the lamppost?
Yeah.
Whatever set that was from.
Lamppost Spidey, as he was called.
Lamppost Spidey. I remember getting an extra Lamppost Spidey and an extra Fantastic Four starter just so I could repaint them as the Future Foundation, because I preferred the color scheme, and it's like the only repainting I've ever done in this game. And I wanted to play them all together in their appropriate colors.
I have found what I was looking for. So give me a second to get all these images queued up, because there's that really exciting Future Foundation one. And there's some more interesting stuff, to say the least. I don't want to highlight the dates, but tentatively, House of X is supposed to be December. Future Foundation is supposed to be February. The Heroclix Superstar WWE Heroclix Superstar Shakeup is supposed to be in February.
We'll see.
And Wonder Woman is in April. I'll keep my fingers crossed on that one, but I'm not going to hold my breath because.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, so that salivating, saliva drooling causing picture, as Tom described it, just give me there we go. So we got all the kids up in front along with Herbie.
Mouth-watering is usually the preferred terminology.
I know, and I was trying to make it as vivid and gross an image in your head as I could possibly make it. So as Tom said, the Moloids are front and center there. Herbie's up there, along with Artie, and and a little. Is that, what did you say? It was Impossible Boy, or
is it? I can't remember the name of the green kid.
It's so definitely related to Impossible Man. So.
It is, yeah. And I can't remember the blue aquatic guys' names either. I remember them from the comics. I can never remember what they're called.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got the Power Pack. Alex from the Power Pack is in there, along with Valeria and Franklin, as we mentioned, and Awesome Andy. Oh
man, I love the outfit, like the cutoff or the cutoff dress shorts and the pink shirt. It's so cool. It's a great image for. And you know what? I mean, if that's part of the figures that are starting to look better, I'm all in.
And this is a lot. Like this image in and of itself is, I really should count it rather than keeping approximating. So that's 6. There
16.
is another 6, and then another 9. 50, I count 15. I think 15 or 16. Yeah. Is it 16? I
got 16.
Okay, that's 16 presumably keyworded figures in one image. Like, if that was all it was, that's still a big injection of new FF to the team. And again, because I love that form of the new Fantastic Four so much, any Fantastic Four keyworded figure gains immediate additional consideration past what it can do, for the fact that it can be a utility in your back pocket for a certain type of build. So it's an additive effect. They were very smart to start with giving us Fantastic Four and giving us a trait that would allow us to want more Fantastic Four to come to add to what was there, outside of just the benefit of them being shared keyword figures to begin with. So that's all good news to me.
Yeah. And the fact that the Invisible Woman only had the Future Foundation figure only had the Fantastic Four keyword means they're not making a new Future Foundation keyword, or not necessarily going to do that. And they're just gonna, like you were speculating there, just gonna add this all to Fantastic Four.
That's great news.
It's definitely a keyword that is getting a resurgence. And you could tell WizKids was way more excited to make more Fantastic Four than anything else. They did not like it. It almost feels like they said go, and WizKids was like, "We are already done. We've been done for a year."
Exactly. Like you kind of feel that while they've been designing, especially all these like event-based sets that still had prominent FF team members in them, and they keep having to build around them. Your battle worlds, your Earth X's,
Mhm.
and whatnot. Like it really feels like the shackles are off, and they're ready to hit the ground running. And great news for me.
Yeah. All right. So next slide. So remember those switch clicks that came in the Fantastic Four starter? Well, we're getting unpainted Fantastic Four characters, so you can create different alternate paint jobs for either your starter set figures, or you can move the starter set figures onto these alternate dials that we're likely to have here. Personally, I haven't, like, my X-Men ones are all still in the pack. I thought I'd get around to painting them. I'm not. I feel like I only want the Doctor Doom here, but we all kind of expected that.
I'm not skilled enough. I'm not skilled enough to do repaints. So I mean, I'll likely pick it up for the dial, but that's
yeah. I used to work at Games Workshop and kind of learn some tricks while I was there, but I haven't tried them in, like, I was 18, 19. I think I got out of Warhammer and everything around 21 years old. So we're talking 17, almost 17 years ago now.
right.
I probably don't have it anymore.
That's fair.
All right. And then we have a couple figures for the Superstar Shakeup. It's actually a WWE Ring 2-player starter set. So it looks like the ring ain't going anywhere. They're going to refresh it. I wonder if this one will have different abilities. But the characters shown on this one are Seth Rollins, Becky Lynch, Bayley, and The Fiend, which is cool. It's
very kind of a random assortment, but that's fine.
If you ask me, it's a bunch of characters that underwent some drastic changes recently. Because Becky Lynch went from happy-go-lucky Irish woman to the man.
Yep.
Bayley is now, we'll call her Karen for now, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Bray Wyatt did something.
Yep. Absolutely.
And Seth Rollins. Go ahead.
I think it was Calder on Dial H that made a gag that Seth Rollins should have the deity keyword, which I think was funny.
Actually, that's the thing. He's the Messiah, so wouldn't he have the Herald keyword?
I don't know. Sure. Is that what the Messiah is? Is a herald?
That's what I would assume. It's more of a herald to the deity as opposed to the deity himself, right? The Monday Night Messiah himself.
Yeah, what we really need here is a higher power, which is just Vince McMahon.
We're not going to get that con exclusive Christopher Daniels. Little insider wrestling nerd of them there for you. All right, so a lot's coming on the horizon. Hopefully, we'll be able to see people and play with these soon, safely. Because that is a big thing I miss. But that said, going from all this excitement to Worlds, which is even also exciting. The ROC Worlds is just around the corner. They've extended the time to sign up and to register your team till end of day Wednesday, right?
I believe that's what it is. Yeah, Wednesday at midnight, some time zone. I mean, whatever.
I think there's Central Time Zone.
Yeah, sure. I mean, try to get yourself together between now and Wednesday night. I'm glad they gave us a little bit of extra time, and they also and I'm sure you're about to mention this anyway, but they've also said that they are going to go with the current state of rules, even if a watch list update drops in the next couple of days. So they're not going to force people to rebuild the teams they've been working on and the environment in which they've been preparing, which I think is the right choice. I mean, honestly, I would have supported the choice either way, because I can see the argument either way. But I'm glad that they've made a decision, and that's what they want to stick with. So good on them for doing that. And yeah, they've extended that deadline out. I certainly, I hope that a lot of people are happy to get involved. If you're free and if you're interested, then it's a great opportunity to be part of HeroClix Mecca. So I've had a ton of fun recently playing. Also, freed from the clutches of having to ask people for pictures of their stuff because I don't have enough of a collection myself. The last few weeks have just been a dream for me because I've been able to play without requiring ownership. And this is a great opportunity. If you don't care how you do, you just want to see what happens if you play 20 Brainiacs, this will probably be your only opportunity to do that. So if nothing else, for the sheer silliness of the certain things you can do in this environment, then by all means get involved if you're interested. I think that there's a lot of good fun to be had this coming weekend.
Yeah. And that said, with people trying to build the perfect team, we're going to try to go over what archetypes we can predict we're going to see. I know a lot of this is going to sound like stuff we've already talked about. But that's kind of what happens in this environment is when you get into a tournament, and we're trying to help everybody else prep. We've talked about these things in the past, so now it's what do you expect and how do you what do you have to do to deal with it. And so we'll take turns kind of talking about archetypes that we can expect, kind of intermittently add things that we've noticed that we might have not mentioned in our descriptions. And the first one and the obvious one I think that I want to bring up, or the most damning one, as some will say, it's Spider-Man 1776 alongside a couple Captain Marvels. That's been probably the first one that kind of comes to mind for me, and how you deal with it, because we're talking about 4 characters, all with stop clicks, that take away 2 of your actions. Are a Spider-Man family team, keyworded team with Perplex in multitudes, because you have, I believe, the Batman 1776 has it, along with the potential. What's the little kitty's name again? Chewies that you can make. Yeah. So each Captain Marvel can make a Chewie, and Chewie has Perplex, and also has Giant Reach Flurry Blades. So, and it's a free.
Yeah, like there's a very simple team, that one, but just highly effective. As you say, the thing about having that many stop clicks is the fact that it takes a lot of actions to get through it. And if double 1776 is by nature taking your actions away, it's going to lead to some serious challenges. Double 1776s really have a way of screwing up people's deployment. So if you consider a double 1776 and a double Marvel setup, there are still 10 points left there. You could get objects or something with that, but you could just as easily take a map bonus and a WWE ring or something and just go on the offensive immediately. You've already got your opponent on the back pedal, since any kind of round or two of setup that they need to get their objects equipped, they are doing with massively reduced actions. And you're just putting instant pressure and not enough, and restricting actions too much for people to be able to carve through the dials as quickly as they need to deal with the assault. So yeah, totally a viable type of setup.
Mm-hmm. So what's the next one that you can think of? Oh, sorry. And to deal with this, and this isn't the only team we're going to say with about this. Regardless of what team you're using, figure out how to run your team only having 2 actions per turn. So
yeah, that's a good general note. You don't have to build a team that only runs on 2 actions, but you do have to know what your adjustment is in the 2-action meta, and whether or not it really short circuits the team. I think some people are being a little overconfident on how well they can get by with 2 actions, because they can think of maybe their first turn or two and think, okay, I know how I would adjust my initial deployment or setup to account for my 2-action setup. But it's turn 8 that really turns into the problem that you weren't expecting, where you really realize how limited you are. You can get out the gate with 2 actions, but if you can't go the long run, then it's really going to cause challenges. And I think that's what you have to be thinking about.
All right. So, if
I'll segue off yours if you want.
Well, I just wanted to add one thing, and it's
yeah, please.
Because this is a team with a lot of stop clicks, maximize the number of attacks you're making. Because you'll hit the character, get to the stop click. If you stop there, you haven't done anything. So do yourself a favor. and figure out how you can either isolate a character or make multiple attacks in a single turn on those action restrictions. Things like Waldo arms could go a long way. Characters with flurry, characters like these. I'm not saying play these characters for sure, but these are just considerations. The Spider-Man Carnage is, do not hit that character out of your eyesight. That is 40 points of potential house wreckery. So keep your eyes on things like this.
Lots of attacks are good. Yeah. And similarly, like if you know that you're not going to be able to take the Captain Marvel out right away, then know what clicks you don't want her on. Mm-hmm. This happened to me on the weekend. I had a game against Dan Powell, one of the great players, and he was playing a combination of Captain Marvel and Black Widow and a Batman Prime, Steve Rogers, so a little very compact little Avengers team. I was playing a Latvian variant of the Form the New Fantastic Four. Everything is Form the New Fantastic Four right at this point. So this one was Latveria, in which I had what ended up on the map anyway, notwithstanding what I started with, because you had to start with Stu Storm and then do some swaps. But what ended up on the map was God Emperor Doom, a Doom bot, Franklin Von Doom, Valeria Von Doom, and Franklin Richards. And in this matchup, he won map, but didn't come out aggressively enough that I was able to get an opportunity to try to take Captain Marvel out. I got Franklin Richards up to go across the map with hypersonic speed, chose Slingshot because the WWE ring was there, so that after he hit, he could knock her back towards him and take a free attack to knock her back again so that God Emperor Doom could take the long shot. But God Emperor Doom rolled a crit miss, and with Black Widow on the field, it didn't matter that God Emperor Doom was basically in my starting area and Widow was in hers.
Yeah.
Black Widow on the field means that roll stays. So, God Emperor Doom missed, and what was worse is that left Captain Marvel on the worst click she could have been on, which was her last one. And so, in that one, it's hard to know exactly what to do in that situation since, you don't always, you can never plan for a truly terrible roll that becomes unprobable, which is one of the reasons that I think a lot of people hope that something will be done about Chase Widow. But all the same, it was definitely a good situation where if that was going to be where I was leaving Captain Marvel, then I shouldn't have moved her out as much as I did. Or left a point where I couldn't get somebody next to her and try to lock her down. Even with hypersonic, at least there'd be a forced breakaway roll or try to complicate her advance a little bit. I just left her right where I shouldn't have. And that's something that you need to be thinking about if you're going to not have enough actions to take her out. Dropping her onto her last click is bad, but dropping both Marvels onto their first stop click is far less damaging because they don't have the hypersonic, they don't have the ability to go through you. They're on running shots, so they're not as encouraged to try to get right next to you, which is the danger zone for Chewie. And then focus on trying to take them out later in that type of setup. So you think about your priorities change. Normally your priorities are take things out. When you only get 2 actions, it's do the pool strategy. It's not what you make, it's what you leave.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm sorry, I kind of interrupted you. You wanted to segue off of my team.
Which is just another double 76. In a way, it almost feels like we could list an unlimited number, but one that has really been tearing it up is the one we talked about last week on this show.
Yes.
Which is double 76 with the Punisher War Machine, Magneto, Mary Jane, and Spider Pharaoh. That has won 3 of the last 6 ROC online tournaments. Twice with the same pilot and then once with a different pilot. So between John Morley and Steven Spooner, it's responsible for 50% of the wins of the last 6 that have happened. So that is a team not to sleep on. It's really ripping it up, and it is a great example of what Jason was just talking about, which is you both prepare for a lack of actions by getting the ability to make the extra attacks. Punisher War Machine's incredible for that. Being able to combine, since that build often will use either the Soul Gem or in the preferred version has been the Carnage symbiote, because you can basically use that Steel Energy effect, the healing effect, to get back your colossal stamina. That once you're double tapped, it's double attacks all the time with enormous stats, backed up by a team that can support that with shield team ability, perplexes and prob and enhancement, and can also go on the attack themselves when they need to. So it's not basically a one-legged stool. It's a really powerful and profoundly effective team that is working around action restrictions while at the same time imposing them, and that is a really scary combination.
Yeah. And the more you kind of look at it, it's not. It's the sum total of all of its parts. It doesn't need a perplexer necessarily to be within line of fire to get a lot of the things, because War Machine flies. He can carry his shield guys with him, and then the Spider Pharaoh is capable of carrying multiples as well. And there's so many just passive boosts that this team has. It really, really capitalizes on that. Hey, we don't need to take a ton of actions. We can just take two with one guy, and it only counts as one. So
We've also got the awesome Magneto plus MJ paparazzi object steal technique. That's the whole place MJ1, PK or 6. She sidesteps, creates paparazzi within 4 who sidestep, and then they're grabbing your object. Mm-hmm. And most of that was autonomous. And that little thing, I mean, you don't rely on things is actually another thing. Jason kind of pointed out one good general rule of thumb, which is be ready to know what you're going to do if you only get 2 actions. Don't necessarily build around it, but be aware that it's out there and something you'll need to be ready for. Another one I would add in is don't assume that just because you have objects and you have a high theme that you'll get them.
Yeah.
You could very well be losing map. And if you do, there's a lot of different strategies, more than you might think, for disrupting your object equipage. So if you're relying on your objects, then that's bad. That being said, by all means, play them. In a lot of cases, you'll be able to equip them, especially so if you're more likely to win map. But it's the question of the difference between a strategy that relies on a thing and a strategy that is improved upon by a thing. And always make sure that you're leaning towards the latter as opposed to the former would be my general advice.
Yeah. A big thing I think we're kind of pointing out is contingency is key. Plan for all of your strategy to get thrown out the second you hit the battlefield. And, yeah, kind of go from there. So the next team it's classic. It's been around for a while. It isn't going anywhere. It's the Vulture. We're kind of going to step away from the 1776 for a second because it's there. We know about it.
There are lots of variations. Just be aware, 76 is a thing.
Yeah.
Go on.
And this is a team we're all too familiar with, and it's Jason Wingard and the Vulture. It's a dominant force. And
infinite loop team.
Yeah, it's basically Vulture attacks all your dudes multiple times with tons of attack and damage, usually with a series of perplexes, etc. And they have ways. This is a team that's found a way to operate without leadership already. In some cases, Jason Wingard has leadership though. So, but
he does, yeah.
I mean, for all the actions it has, a quick change in formation, your perplexes work and everything kind of it doesn't rely as heavily on the number of actions, or it can rely without them. And basically, the idea is this team chucks a Vulture at your team, flurries and hits for between like 5 and 7 damage. 5 and 6 damage because it's a 3 damage character. And then each attack he gets twice. If he kills something, he moves on to the next thing. If he kills more than one thing, he moves on to 2 more things and gets like 4 attacks off. It is a snowball effect. And now this is a team that struggles with some of the things that we just mentioned we'll say specifically with the Captain Marvel, because they're stop clicks, and stop clicks are the Vulture's worst nightmare. But that's not the only thing this team relies on. This also has Jason Wingard, who mind controls one of your guys, makes an action with them, and then wherever they end up, as long as they're close enough to one of your characters, he's going to mind control using that character as the base to mind control to the next one, and will just punch your team with your team. Which
right, yeah, you need 3 big hits on Captain Marvel to KO her, and Vulture only does 2. But Jason makes one of them be them punching each other, and then Vulture can be a finisher. So they can swap their roles very easily on that type of build and be very functional.
Yeah. So, and This team has. I've seen the different variations on how they're getting their perplexes. So it's those two are the base, and then everything else around it. That's what changes a lot. Look for TK. They want to get their objects quick or ways of getting the objects fast. These are generally well, they're not generally. These are non-themed teams. There's like no way
Correct.
of getting.
There's no way to do it.
Yeah. So, and thank God they didn't do something for the Magia or Brutes with Vulture with the Spider-Man family. Oh my gosh. Either way, this is a team we know exists, and we've just kind of had to deal with its existence for a while. Some of what we've already talked about was built with this in mind. And yeah, it's just be ready for this to a certain degree. It's hard to full-blown prepare for this team because of the two ways that it can function. It can get around some of your stop clicks. So unless you're like taking one damage at a time, or you have a ton of evasion that you can really rely on, it's going to be a hard team to deal with. Now, at the same time, some variations might look at your team if it doesn't do enough damage, and Tom has mentioned this in the past, might bring Null's All Black the Necro Sword as an alternate object condition, which will say, okay, this is a team that is evasive, but it's soft, so my 6-7 damages will just kill things, and I'll just get around the evasion with that. There's a lot of variation on this team, but ultimately the goal is infinitely make as many attacks as it possibly can with these two different effects and do as much damage as it can to you.
It can also slow the game right down for that very reason, and we talked about that in the show as well. The infinite loops have a tendency to take more time than you even think they do, so when you're playing against it, make sure you've got your eye on the clock, because sometimes after they do what they do, you may have enough left to fight back, but you may not have enough time. So, do the best you can to stay on top of it. I mean, to some extent, it's worth noting the top two teams of Nationals were Jason and Vulture teams. And Jason Vulture in the arms only is 135 points. It's less than 50% of the team. So as Jason pointed out, there's a ton of different ways you can fill it out. So sometimes that's leaning heavily into Perplex, but it doesn't always have to be. It could be leaning heavily into other sources of attacking, because frankly, Vulture coming across the field and flurrying, even with his base stats or only a Perplex or 2, can still be hugely damaging to some teams. At the very least, is probably going to get 50 or 60 points worth in the process, even if he's not powered by 1,000 perplexes. To some extent, there's an adage that says, generals are always fighting the last war, if you've ever heard that expression. And what it generally refers to is the idea that, very loosely speaking, those who are kind of making decisions about tactics will often look to the experience of the last major conflict to dictate how they will approach the current one. And oftentimes that's not the best way to win a new conflict, because things have changed and there may not be an acknowledgement of it. But there is a huge number of people that are going to follow that logic. So the very fact that these teams have proven track records and were, like, again, the entire top table at Nationals, expect to see it at Worlds.
Yeah.
No question about it.
One of the bonuses of this team to play against it, though, is that if you aren't bringing the 1776, you're going to get to use your actions. So this is one of the few teams in most iterations that we've seen so far, I should identify, isn't using 1776. Now, that's not to say that there isn't somebody who's come up with an iteration that is using 1776 as a piece of the team. Because it's already a non-themed team. Sometimes a team like this can get very toolboxy. You just have answers for a lot of things. So get excited that you might get more actions than you normally get, but don't get too excited because things are changing. This game kind of goes, it ebbs and flows, and somebody might come up with an idea that involves 1776.
Well, and the other thing, like, as far as if we're just kind of to close the loop on what to do when you see this team, I mean, again, there is no themed version, which means that if you're coming with a themed team, you almost certainly are going to be able to act first, and it's good to be able to try to take advantage. If you've got the ability to steal objects, this is an awesome opportunity to do that. If there are certain maps that are going to make deployment more difficult, then better to try to lean towards them. If you are playing an Alpha Strike team, there's a pretty good chance you'll be able to get the Alpha Strike. especially if it's a board crossing one, but even if it's not, if it's well enough set up, then you're putting them in a difficult spot because either Vulture tries to go and rip through your team without the arms, or they've got to take a turn to equip those arms, and it's going to be that much more challenging. Um, Usually, I mean, there is of course the shield version where you destroy the arms and Bill Coulson auto equips Vulture and you can go right on the attack. That is a thing, but at that point you've leaned so heavily into one thing that it's basically relies on Vulture, so it has its downfalls too. But yeah, you can usually get the first hit. You do have the first turn to make ready, and if nothing else, just be aware of how you place your figures. We naturally put our figures next to each other, but they don't have to be there. And if, as long as figures that died one hit to Vulture are not within 4 squares of another figure, there's no way that Vulture could take out that piece and then immediately take out another and then build the charge chain. And so, when in doubt, at least scatter. So you're going to make it a little more difficult and force more wasted rolls, because more wasted rolls are more likely to turn into misses, and then you can take advantage.
Yeah. I eked out a win against one. Emily was using it with my Latveria team. That is not a win I deserve. So, just keep that out there.
Totally.
All right. So, next archetype we should be looking at.
Yeah. Next archetype. I mean, I think it's about time we spent a moment talking about Black Widow.
Yep.
Black Widow is a hugely impactful piece, and there are a lot of different teams that start with Chase Widow and build out from there.
Yeah.
I'm going to ignore, like, I think that one thing we'll come to later is the straight up Alpha Strike, like basically the carry across the field and bang, bang, bang. She has a place on that team, but we'll get to that team later. The teams I'm thinking of are more so double Chase Widow and Marvel. Chase Widow and double Marvel. Chase Widow, shifting focus Widow, and Marvel. And something else. Happy Hogan. Other things of that nature, combining together a few things that work really well. Shifting Focus Widow and Chase Widow really have great synergy together, since some of the Shifting Focus things, like you can do the thing where you put down the smoke that takes away team abilities, so it removes their whip protection, and then Widow can start outwitting them, in addition to the fact that you can just turn their dial off, as we know. You've got the one with the shifting focus where they can't use improved targeting, and because all the Widows are stealthy, taking away improved targeting from your opponent forces them to get next to them, which is exactly where you don't want to be when penetrating poison characters, because you start hitting the map and Widows turning your dial off again. And there's a lot of variations, because Chase Widow always has the ability to basically get carried as far as her carrier can take her, or just move her own not insignificant movement. Drop a Widow recruit next to you, turn your dial off with her powers, so you have no modifiers and no powers that aren't colored boxes. And then the Widow recruit poisons you, and the Widow recruit goes in the attack. And if your player with a Captain Marvel, that creates a Chewie that goes in the attack as well. It's just coming at you faster than you're ready for. And it's extremely difficult to get through because she's stealthy, and if she's being played well, even if you can bust stealth, you're going to have a hard time seeing her. And if you manage if you get next to her, you got to hit a 20 at least. She's usually got theme props to back it up. And even if you can start to get some damage off to her, she's got a stop click that heals back, and then she's just a very good piece in her own right. So there's a lot to recommend her, and she's a solution to a lot of things right now, because she can simply turn off dials and create penetrating auto damage. She's basically Shredder, right? Like Shredder would move the entire way and then deal penetrating damage.
Mm-hmm.
Widow does the same thing, only you basically add an attack with it.
Yeah.
And you add the ability to make them not have any powers anymore. So really, really quite oppressive, and really, really quite powerful, and something to be aware of. I think it might be the most. I've seen more Widow teams than any other single archetype in the last 6 or whatever online tournaments I've played in the last few weeks in preparation for Worlds. I don't know. It's not winning every time, but as far as the one that the majority of people are leaning on, I think I've seen Widow more than I've seen any other single piece.
Yeah. And Widow has a lot of feel-bad moments that go with everything that Tom said. If their team is rolling well, deal with it. If your team is rolling bad, deal with it. Because if you're rolling fours and lowers, you're stuck with them. If they're rolling tens or highers, you're stuck looking at them. So, yeah, everything about the Widow is really tough, and she's a really potent character. A couple things that she doesn't deal with so well. Powers on dial, oddly enough. So, like,
true.
If you have the colored powers on the dial, she does have Outwit, so she can kind of cancel a few powers out there. But if you have some way of protecting yourself from that, you get around it. But ultimately, like, she isn't as potent if you have the powers that you're relying on the dial. And she only really affects standard powers in that way. So your stop clicks are relatively safe.
I mean, she does have Outwit. But...
Yeah. But like if you have a click that says stop and then another power on it, you're gonna probably lose that other power, but the stop is still gonna be there. So yeah. So understand how she works is ultimately the best way to deal with her. If you understand all of her workings, you can get a beat on her and work your way around it. She's not immediately invincible too. If you can get a hit on her, if she's not based with you, which is, not unlikely, you can get a lot of damage off on her and then take away a lot of what she's able to do. And that's really, you got to take advantage of the fact that when she takes damage, she takes all of it.
Yeah, in fact, I would simplify that statement a little bit, which is your objective against Black Widow for the most part to start is deal 2 damage.
Yeah.
Anything you can do to deal 2 damage to Black Widow is something that's worth doing because it knocks her off of leadership and Outwit and the ability to create recruits. The double loss of the create figures and Outwit is huge for Black Widow. You're also knocking her off her ranged move and attack effects, which are running shot and side blast. And so that is a lot to lose for only 2 damage. Not that 2 damage is easy to do with her. We've talked about that at length. But anything you can do to deal her 2 damage is going to make her. I don't want to say more manageable because she's a really good piece. I can't overstate that point. So much of it is like oppressive when it's stacked up to where she is off the top of her dial. So anything you can do to just get her some initial damage, and then just basically trench it out with her.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to the next archetype. This one's you know what? I don't want to tell you because it sounds like you are ready to talk about Alpha Strike, and I'm going to include this team when we have that big conversation about Alpha Strike. It's
sure,
but
okay.
There is the existence, and I haven't seen the team itself, but groups of Groots along with the Valeria. I personally haven't seen the team. I haven't tried the team. I have the tools for the team, and we've discussed this at length. Place you, do a ton of damage. Place you, do a ton of damage. If you're still alive, you deserve it.
Knock you back, do a ton of damage. The influence ring is huge on that type of a team because anyone gets a knockback.
Also worth noting, even though you might have stop clicks, they don't generally care because they're doing 1 damage at a time. Captain Marvel's going to care because I believe she has Invincible on her stop click. Quote me if I'm wrong. Or
she'll be okay.
Yeah,
because she's stop Invincible, so she's fine.
Yeah, but ultimately, you will be able to eat. You'll be able to chew through clicks that don't have Invincible on this pretty well. And for the most part, when you talk about Valeria, she's 35 points, and each individual Groot is 30. If you include, let's say, 1 Valeria and 3 Groots, we've spent. What did I say?
It's 35 for Groot and 30 for Valeria.
Oh, I thought it was
I think
the
you
other
got
way.
it backwards.
Okay. Either way, you're still at less than half your build. Which is, I think, the point that I really wanted to get across.
And like you said earlier, I don't think we've yet seen the team. No. A very popular call is the Prime Storm, who has the traded ability to just knock people back who are nearby. And she is monster keyword. That's the Storm Colossal that is on Shadow King's shoulder, or whatever. And she's she's a monster keyword, so she doesn't so much work out on the
Okay, I do have
Valeria
the problems.
version. But certainly Venom Groots and Storm in combination can be extremely impactful, especially considering the Venom Groots don't need to see. So as long as the Storm can get close enough to knock them around, the Venom Groots can just deal them damage just by simple virtue of being nearby. So a lot of people, I think, are thinking that that might be the starting point, but I have yet to see anybody come up with the end point. But believe it, this is Worlds is when you unleash your cool tech. So.
Onslaught's another potential choice for that, who's a monster as well, that shares the monster keyword. Throw in a Captain Venom, you have a monster theme team that gets named theme team bonuses, so that's scary. The Onslaught doesn't care if you ignore knockback when he knocks you back, and he knocks you back a lot of squares. And if a bunch of those squares are near those Groots, I got bad news for you. You're dead.
And And Monster has a lot of low point filler that's good for stuff. I mean, Wendigo is the natural one that comes to mind, but there are others that are also, thankfully, at least you don't get wounded tokens unless you're attacked. So that would be completely absurd if all this Venom Group damage could activate your Wendigos. But still, they're a great combination. So there's a big toolkit. Somebody will come up with a good team. I challenge someone to come up with a really good team and win Worlds.
Mm-hmm. I would love to see the team that involves this problem, so that they kind of turn around and go, yeah, okay, we figured out what we got to do to this.
Totally.
Yeah.
You mentioned Alpha. I think that there are a few different ways. The two pieces that come to immediate mind when we mention Alpha Strike current dominance are the Atom and Micron, because they're both the pieces that basically allow. They don't need to be carried, so you can get a multi-taxi and just add your Atom or Micron or both to come along with that multi-taxi without actually counting towards what's being taxied. And then they get placed afterwards and can immediately take action. Atom is more on the support side of that with the Outwit and Perplex, coupled with sidestep to get into position, and does have the ability to do some damage if he wants to. And Micron is the damage beast with the Close Combat Expert. I think it's Close Combat Expert. It's definitely charge to start, and I think Close Combat Expert if you don't have to use your charge, but I could be misremembering.
I have a serums up this time, but just give me a second.
Yeah. At least I think I'm right anyway. And also Micron, if memory serves, is bringing enhancement and power, so he's making other things better that are doing the action after moving. So I saw in Nationals we had a pretty good run with Alyssa. Who was playing using the Steve Rogers to bring Micron into the Avengers, and coupling that with a Voyager, a Medusa, and a Chase Black Widow. I mentioned we would come back to Chase Black Widow, and here we are, because Chase Black Widow is another one who does it. She can get carried, then she creates the recruit poisons, and the recruit can go on the attack. Backed up by enhancement and power from Micron. That can go a long way. Then you've got Micron either close combat experting or charging. Medusa creates hair. She can go on the attack. Voyager is an incredible mover. And if you don't have to be doing it, you could also just be TKing through like all of Ancient Hold with Voyager to send somebody forward to go on a more precision attack if that's your preference. So that is a construction.
Yeah.
But look for various constructions. I've seen people really do well with combinations of Jason Wingard, Micron, the Atom, and other things, because Wingard's another one that can get carried up or move up and then create a pog that goes in the attack. Oftentimes create a pog with good movement to be the one carrying, because again, Micron and Atom just tag along. They don't count towards being carried. So even someone who only has passenger 1 can still carry 3 people with them if 2 of them are named Micron and the Atom respectively. Heck, they could do multiples, because you can play multiple Atoms. So you could do Micron, several Atoms, Jason Wingard, and 1 person with big movement and taxiing, backed up with a Retaliator or 2 to make you not want to just go on the attack immediately against them for fear of getting Tri-Sentineled or Dark Phoenixed. And I think it has a lot of potential.
Yeah, I played against this, and it is overwhelming. This team will have a few issues with the 1776 combinations. That's, I think, a given, because even the Medusa's got to get close, which puts her too close to 1776. As a result, the hair is no longer autonomous. Right. And then her leadership is also non-functional. So now I'm not saying this team can't work, but there will be a need for variation, to say the least. So look for that. Some kind of variation on that. There might be a range variation that we're not ready for. So
maybe, yeah. I mean, certainly, we'll see. It's harder to carry people who are flyers, but Punisher War Machine is something that comes to mind right away when I think about that, because of the ability once he's tokened up to make attacks for free. And I'm sure that there are other variations. Waldo Arms, again, this gives you the free incapacitate or free close combat stuff. I think that there are a few. Your point is well made that 1776 will cause trouble for it, and it's one of the better reasons. Double 1776 is not the only way to pay 1776.
yeah,
I think he's a really good piece, and I'm certainly in the camp of people who think he has a place as long as he's not completely doesn't belong in your team. If you can get him onto your team as a single, he can cause as much disruption to these types of Alpha Strike teams we're describing as a double would, because they're close enough that they're within the no leadership bubble, they're within the no autonomous bubble, and then they're -1 action, so they're back to 2 actions anyway. So 1776 goes a long way as long as it's able to get into the fray. I mentioned Calder from Dial H. I played a game against him several weeks ago in which he had a triple Super Skrull with a 1776, but because 1776 was coming up being played aggressively, he was getting 276's worth of effect out of one once he was into turn 3. So there's potential there.
So everybody who's screaming to make his thing a unique modifier, that's fine.
Honestly, I don't think I've come to think it may not be enough.
Yeah.
As weird as that may seem. I think maybe he needs something even more severe than the unique modifier if they ever decide to reevaluate. But we'll see what happens.
If he succeeds on leadership, calling it now.
What do you got? What do you got next?
I think at this point we're kind of hitting that. Well, okay, Darkseid. He has been played. He has been used. He does work. And it is one of those teams that you send out the I-beams, you hit, and you. Generally, the rest of the team, it's 200 points, is all in Darkseid. And you protect him from there. And guess what, guys? There's a new 15-point barrier. I don't know if you heard.
Yeah.
So, as a result, he fires...
you got, like...
You're saying? Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, Matt Esbrook's thing of putting a Daredevil, like, diagonally across in front of him. So he just completely blocks him off with a guy who can't die.
Yeah. Like, there's a lot of ways now that exist, even more so that existed before, to protect him. Which is super obnoxious because he just sits there, send his I-beam, attack you. He's got huge stats. You can perplex those stats up before you send the I-beams out. And then wash, rinse, repeat, protect the Darkseid. And hope for the best. It's not unviable. It works. If it gets a kill, it is hard to get your points back. As Tom said, that version that includes the EarthX Daredevil, you got to kill the Daredevil, who's hard enough to kill as it is. The Darkseid is a 200-point dial, so basically it's like if you score any points, it's got to be more than what Darkseid scores, which is either kill Darkseid or hope your 6s are there.
Right.
So it's viable. It's a team. Watch for it. Brace yourself for it. Consider ways around it. There's not a lot of characters that ignore characters for line of fire. There's a few. If they're using that,
but it is rare.
Yeah. So if they're using that variation, but then if they're using some kind of version with Marvella, not just giving up theme team. Which is also equally viable. Or even more so, you could be getting Spider Pharaoh, a couple Marvellas, and Darkseid, and guess what? That's a Spider-Man family theme team.
Sure is.
So,
yeah, it's absolutely viable. It is one that we were talking about the fact that the 1776 screws up those alpha teams. Chase Widow kind of screws up Darkseid teams as long as Chase Widow can get to them.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge there. Try to protect him, because otherwise, like a Chase Widow and a Shifting Widow team have an amazing ability to embarrass Darkseid, which just feels wrong to me.
Yeah.
But like you've got somebody coming in there, putting down some smoke, so he's no longer quintessent. So then you outwit his invincible. You say he can't use any modifiers. You just dig through his whole dial like it's not even there because he doesn't have his super impervious power. Like you can one turn a Darkseid with a few like wieners from the Black Widow movie set. It's kind of crazy, but it is a good example of why you do need to protect them. But to Jason's point, there's now a themed option to do that so that you can try to use map to your advantage as well. And otherwise, there is always the just pack in the corner, go behind Daredevil, and hope that they can't get through him strategy too. So yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. So Darkseid, don't sleep on him, and no. Ultimately, when we say it, like this is one of those, we're starting to get off of that side. Like this is a figure you need to know how to play against, and that's kind of why we're highlighting these. Is like it's a team that exists, know how to play against it, and that's the best way to prep against this. I'm not saying, oh my god, if you can't beat this, you're going to lose, but know your battle strategy going up against this team. This team exists, and not everybody's going to be playing it, but somebody might be playing it. I'm also not saying, under no circumstances, when I talk about anything that we're saying here, we are never saying change your build, but we are saying change the way you think about how your build works. It's a big thing that we want to talk about when we say these things.
That's a perfect segue, because the next team I wanted to bring up is a team that is explicitly created so that you can think about how you want to build your team, and that's Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four is making waves. It did win the most recent qualifier. There was a gentleman from France, I believe, won the qualifier on Sunday with a Fantastic Four build. Lots of people have been experimenting with Fantastic Four builds, and it's two great things about Fantastic Four are, number one, it almost always has a very strong defensive core because there are several different sources of perplex. Most often, in fact, I think without exception, your Fantastic Four builds are building around the SR thing that is a 19 defend along with perplex. And so everyone around is getting a 19, and then you've got perplexes, and sometimes you've got additional defensive abilities past that. You've got some individually difficult to kill pieces, guys like Franklin Von Doom, who have multiple stop clicks, Wolverine, who never truly is KO'd as long as there's another Fantastic Four member of the team to come back with. Franklin Richards, who just has an unreasonably deep dial for his points even before he's choosing powers, and then it gets even sillier once he is. And I could go on. But there are lots of different pieces, and we can't ignore Black Leopard, who has the ability to potentially cap your value, so it's that much harder to get through those massive defenses in the first place. So the Fantastic Four is, like, for one thing, very defensively capable usually on its basic foundation, and the other thing is it's extremely versatile on what it's doing to attack, because if it needs big pulse wave swing, then you've got your Franklin Richards, you've got your Human Torch. If you're okay with close combating, so Wolverine is a super effective way of charging, flurrying in to do some serious damage. If you want to do like pinging damage, then Valeria, Von Doom, and sources of TK, spin ring, other things with influence ring, knockback sources or placement sources combined with her have the ability to sort of ping your opponent down. I think I mentioned Franklin Richards, but of course there's a lot to say there because he can pick any powers. So he's a charge flurry piece and a hypersonic piece and a pulse wave piece and everything that you want him to be all in one. And again, and so on and so forth to whatever your particular construction might want to be. So defensively, very stout, and offensively, very dynamic is the best way I can describe the Fantastic Four. And that means there's almost no way to prepare for it. Thankfully, nothing about it that I've yet seen is just outright busted. It's just really quite good. So more than any other team, it is one that I think your best bet is going to be to come in with a game plan based on what they've reformed to go against you with. And basically, easier said than done, but try to outplay them. Yeah. I don't know what else to say.
I mean, in my experience, I've played against a team about 4 or 5 times now, and the biggest hurdle is the defense. And when it's combined with that Black Leopard, it is even more obnoxious. The first rule of this team: Black Leopard needs line of fire.
Right.
Aside from that, make sure you can hit stupid high defenses, because that team does bring exactly that, stupid high defenses. So, like one of the tricks I used was charging at a Black Leopard who was still going to have a 21 defense, but I was able to use like my 13-14 attack from all my perplexes because I put something else in front of it while it was adjacent to another character. So know how to block lines of fire in interesting ways like that.
Diagonally opposed blocking.
Understand those weird diagonal lines of fire. They will save your life. But also bring the ability to hit some really high defenses, or ways that you don't necessarily have to roll dice to do the damage. This team does rely a lot. A lot of the combinations do rely heavily on the formations, especially when you consider the 19 defense from the Thing. So it will have its own little nightmares with Groots that are able to move you around. I'm not saying this is the answer, this is how it happens. It's an option. So be aware of these options. All right.
I have a couple more. Do you have any more?
I'm kind of in that realm of fringe, so I kind of want to. You're also a little bit more dialed in. This has been my experience with the metagame. I'm gonna kind of pass it on to Tom, who's got some. I mean, obviously, before we get into it, everything Spider-Man family is a thing.
Well, yeah.
But, yeah.
I mean, that is certainly worth noting, is that everything can be, and there are lots of combinations of what we've talked about now that are possible, based on weird configurations of Spider-Man family looping in other things so that it all becomes a theme. By the same token, again, I think, as we mentioned before, Nationals final table had no theme.
Yeah.
Theme is not required.
No.
And the one thing about the Spider-Man family giving out keywords to all kinds of people is that, other than Marvella, who is very low points, but it's only celebrity, which is a bit of a limited keyword, most of them cost enough points that it's not as easy to come up with massive stacks of numbers. The next two teams I wanted to mention, I will actually be a bit brief with, because I think we kind of know what we're talking about. The one is robots, and there are lots of variations of robots. It's still out there. Now there is a version with Steampunk Penny where it becomes name theme, which is very valuable. Maybe though it's greater value to you personally just to have massive numbers of themes, and so drop your Steampunk Penny and go with 4 Brainiacs and a ring. So whatever you like, but robots tend to take one of two. There's kind of two extremes, and then there's points in between. One extreme is the extreme unkillable, where you've got a lot of danger room. You're basically using all the danger room constructs, as well as some of the tougher colossals, and filling out with miscellaneous points. So it's kind of the robots who are very hard to kill. You've got the extreme swarm, where you're using several Tri-Sentinels and Superman robots and Brainiacs, plus other things that are good, so that you've got enormous bonuses to be able to go to whatever map you want, and then if it's a really oppressive blocking one, then Tri-Sentinel can really rip that up and stuff. So you kind of got the extreme numbers and manipulation of the map, and there's the extreme hard to kill, or combination. Very popular to do a combination of the two, with 2 or 3 danger rooms and several low point variants, or maybe a couple danger rooms of Steampunk Penny if you're really interested in having game theme. You can still fit a 1776 or 2 onto that type of build construction easily enough, because you're already Spider-Man family as long as Steampunk's there. So it's another hybrid. But it's, again, we don't have a lot to say about it because we know it's out there. And I would say the same about Scientists, which is the other one worth noting. Scientists was a real surprise to me at Nationals, and I think to a lot of people, because it was constructed around huge theme bonuses to go on to Ancient Hold, and then enable Reg Barkley to basically kill everybody, because Ultra Humanite, which is mind control regardless of the map, to make you go stand next to a wall, and then Reg Barkley would punch you through that wall to deal 6 damage. I think it's still viable, if I'm being honest. It struggles a little bit against the 1776s, but not enough. And I still think it has a lot of potential. So I would not sleep on it. There is always the possibility that in our Devenom can turn it into a name theme as well. But again, I don't know if it needs it because it's already so good. So either version of it is something to be aware of. I haven't seen much of it recently, but I think it requires a pretty skilled pilot, and that's maybe people are shy away from doing that in sort of their bang around practices, but maybe that's where they'll go come the big day. So that would be the other one I'd be aware of.
Yeah. And Tom kind of alluded to this. Spider-Man family doesn't stop at one keyword sometimes. Sometimes you can get multiples in a single team. You can include robots with rulers sometimes. And there's some low-point ruler Colossal Retaliators like Magneto, as an example. He's 25 points, you got the ruler keyword. If you have a Spider Pharaoh, you got 85 points. That's ruthless.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. And I should also mention, this isn't a team construction, but we never assume that you will not see Batman Prime, because as soon as you decide that you're just not going to see it, that's the point at which you will see it, and it will roast your entire team.
Yeah.
So always be aware that it's out there, even if I don't think anyone's yet found the perfect version.
Yeah. And that's one of those things that it hits you, and it hits you hard, and just kind of chuckles at you when it does it.
Yeah, man.
All right. So I think that about covers the major archetypes to be aware of. Now, there's things on the edge that you might run into. Somebody will try something silly. And sometimes you'll have to plan on the fly. So when we talk about all these teams, do not strictly counter build. That will be your downfall. You want to pick an archetype that you're comfortable with. Doesn't necessarily have to be one of these ones. It could be your own concoction that we didn't mention here. But these are the things, this is your gauntlet you want to run. These are the teams you need to be prepared for. So have your plans of action to deal with all of them. And, do note that if your big plan of action is to hit them really hard, plan for that critical miss. Plan for them to roll that shape change. Plan for them to roll that super senses. It's very likely to happen. Plan under the worst possible conditions when you're building your team. And also, we didn't mention it as one of the big archetypes. Tom played a double null to some success. You might not get your shape changes and super senses on some games.
True, that was a fun, I wonder if anybody would ever have the balls to do that in a Black Widow world. But, hey, I mean, you get lucky.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. So, brace yourself. You're in for a fight. And expect plan for every game to be the hardest game of your life. Because that is the Worlds and the Nationals environment. No games are easy. Every game you're sweating. And every game you kind of look and go, I can't believe I pulled that off. Or, I had to pull off this amazing move. That is the environment to prepare yourself for. I don't think we say that enough. Where it's like, this is where people are trying their hardest, and no game is going to be easy. No archetype is going to be easy to walk over anymore. There's a lot of tools that a lot of these archetypes that are older have added in the past couple sets that make it that much better. So
that's the way.
Yeah. So with that, I think it's time to open it up to our fans.
Let's do it.
And we'll be fielding your questions. If you're watching us live, instructions are there, but put in capital letters question. If you have a question for us to answer now, you still have a little bit. We have to kind of dig through our social media, etc. But the first question we have is on our Facebook, and it comes from Michael Fedor, our Alpha patron. Hey guys, I'm really excited about the upcoming new sets that got previewed recently. I'm really looking forward to equipping the new Golden Lasso. But what do you think it does? Would it be interesting to guess or speculate on what it does? I think the standard incapacitate is a little overdone, in my humble opinion. Okay, I'm sorry, but incapacitate is going to be part of it, I think. But I don't think it's just going to be incapacitate, because it's the lasso of truth. It's also the lasso of your damage powers, because damage powers are the strategy powers, if you think about it. Outwit, probability control, perplex, they're your strategy powers. Your leadership as well. I have a feeling it's going to be something along the lines of, yes, we're still going to get incapacitate, but the character targeted by it can't use damage powers, or some degree of a slot that WizKids might look at me and go, no, it's going to be this slot, and just make me look like a fool. But I feel like the Lasso of Truth is best represented as those strategy powers and saying, okay, I'm going to take away the advantage of it because I've figured out, you've told me all your strategies, I'm ready for it. So your strategic advantage, which comes from those powers, now in some cases it's not going to make a ton of sense, but I think Close Combat Expert, you're going to tell me what you're going to do with that, and I'm going to dodge it, is kind of a way I look at it. So Incapacitate that says you can't use damage powers, I think is probably a likelihood, but I'm throwing that from from left field. So, Tom, what would you speculate that the Golden Lasso would do?
I really like that. I like that better than anything I could come up with. I think that's a cool idea. I was going to kind of go for a much simpler approach, which is simply agreeing with you that it's going to take something away. I don't know what it is. It might be taking away the effects of equipment as well. It's basically equipment that helps counter other equipment.
How are you so strong? I have this. Oh.
So, like, I can see that being a thing. I can also see it taking away shape change. That's a more limited version of what you've talked about. But again, part of the whole truth idea there being the inability to hide or deceive, and that's ultimately kind of what shape change often is associated with. So maybe when you get hit by it, then your shape change and super senses rolls are reduced by 1 until the next turn or something like that. But it basically taking something away from you. I think I agree. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, because truth takes away your surprise, and when you're not surprised, it's easier to deal with. And it's kind of, I think I might have alluded to it when I was saying it, but if you look at all the damage powers, those are strategy powers. Powers of the brain, powers of training, powers that honesty will take away your advantage of. And I think that's kind of why I went for damage power. I mean, for all I know, the card's not...
And battle story.
Yeah. Or, yeah. Whoops. Well, I mean,
whatever.
It's calming you down. You're telling the truth.
Perfect. Yeah, there's no perfect system.
Well, technically, Battle Fury would be
your idea...
Battle Fury would be immune from the incapacitated anyway.
Well, I guess we're assuming incapacitate is even part of it. I hope they'll just get rid of it. I don't want incapacitate. And I hope it's not just like gains immobile or something like any lasso. Any lasso could give you immobile. A lasso of truth should have some additional effect.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the big thing. It's like, even if it is just incapacitate, it should be incapacitate with extra. And I'm not Yeah, so like that damage power, I think, is probably the idealist's way of putting it. All right, we are going to move into the chat now because I think that's actually it in the socials. Let me double check let me check the Discord just in case, because sometimes things sneak in there. And because we currently started using Discord to film this, I can't go back in behind and be like, oh, what's going on our Discord? Because then everybody sees it. You see? Here we go. Oh, no, never mind. That was last week's. We're good. All right. So in the chat, our first question comes from Neo Shazam. Do you hate the instead of KO fad as much as I do? I'm going to let you go lead with that one, Tom.
The instead of KO fad. So, I mean, we're talking like the Wakanda thing. We're talking about
the secret identity thing.
Yeah, okay.
Would be KO'd instead.
Hard to know, since that comment doesn't actually imply how much Neo Shazam hates it. I assume a lot. And do I hate it as much as Neo Shazam does? No, I don't think I do. It has yet to really hurt the game for me in practice. So it is one of these things that I feel like it has to hurt the game in practice before it's going to in principle. I actually kind of like the secret identity thing, because from both sides it becomes an interesting little game of chess. If you are the one with the secret identity, and the question is, do you wish to secret identity in? Do you think you're going to get 25 points out of it, or are you just giving points away for doing it? It is a bit of a little bit of a gamble and a little bit of interesting decision making. On the other side, you're in the same boat. Do I bother to try to KO this figure, or is it better to just try to lock this figure down with them, or put somebody next to them that they're not going to be able to reasonably hurt? TK them out of the way, or knock them back, or something like. Do something that isn't triggering them Maybe if I know they're 4 clicks deep, but they kind of suck after the first couple, then maybe just try to go for a pot shot and then ignore them until there's the opportunity where I know I'm going to be able to capitalize, and then put the decision to them. Like, do you want to switch over and give me an extra 25 points when I KO the person, or leave me with another action that I can use to try to get somebody else on your team? Like, again, it's a chess game on both sides of the equation, and that's why I kind of like the way it works. Krakoan Revival feels a lot less chess gamey, but because it does give up those awesome pogs, then there still is an element to it. So far, I'm actually guardedly optimistic as opposed to, depressingly pessimistic about it. But who knows? I could be wrong.
I look at it in the way nowadays is it's not as bad as some of the older effects have been. We go to Unimind, where it's like, oh man, I killed one of the hardest characters in the game to kill because he's got 1,000 defense powers. All right, cool. Now I've got all these other things, and that took most of my time. I can't tell you how many Uniminds I popped and then heard the clock go off. Like that.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Especially considering they're like, okay, so where am I going to place these guys? I got to place them within 3. So who am I going to? Okay, so I'm going to place this guy up here. And like, it's not like sometimes it is stalling, but sometimes it's not, because you can't expect them to just instantly know where to put their figures. So if that takes a minute or two, that's a really valuable minute or two.
Yeah, that's a valuable minute on my turn. And I think that was a killer. Is Unimind did a lot of things on the opponent's turn, but I'm talking about old things.
That's why
Sorry. Go ahead.
Last turn was really nice in those days. I mean, I went to the top table at ROC Cup 2 years ago. In large part, several games, things got resolved during last round that would have just been losses in a World of Last Action because of the fact that Unimind was so prevalent, and that pop effect and the decision-making process of placement. These things take time. So, I agree. It was bad. Dead Man and Resurrection Man, those were some awful not KO effects.
Yeah.
Please, no more of that, please.
I had the luckiest game once where I was up against both of those characters, and the Absorbing Man, that if I didn't roll what you got for damage, I don't take anything. And because I absolutely annihilated the Absorbing Man, I was actually able to pull off the win on that one. But it was all bad luck on my opponent's side because he rolled the damage. It's like, I'm going to go up to 6 damage and attack the Absorbing Man. Let's see what happens. You rolled a 6!
Yeah, I hate that. I hate it. Like, it's... I don't want to win or lose purely by luck. I appreciate that luck is an element of this game, but let's let it continue to be an element. Don't keep creating effects that basically have huge outcome swings based on nothing but a little bit of dumb luck.
Yeah. All right.
That trend I don't like.
But yeah, ultimately, I think I'm more fine with it the way they've been doing it, because in a lot of cases they have been giving you points now for it. Immortal Hulk gives you points. The Wolverine, I think, right now is the only one that doesn't. So
yeah, that's true.
Maybe that's what they should do, is add like, just, it doesn't have to be all of his points, but like 25 at a time. Sure. Anyway.
Oh, he could be very Immortal Hulkish. Like, every time he dies, he gives up a few points, but he never truly goes away.
All right. The Superior. Do you think that more properties will come to Heroclix, and what would you like to see? I mean, imagine the look on my face as a wrestling fan when WWE showed up. I think I know at least once a year we get this question, and there's millions of properties I would love to see in Heroclix. I mean, if WWE is allowed to be there, I can accept AEW. Heck, there's a wrestling dinosaur over there, man. So,
absolutely. Sorry. Excuse me. Right now I feel very mixed about.
That's why I said that.
Yeah. Right now I feel very mixed about making any prognostications on what will come to a strictly in-person tabletop game in a world where being in person is no longer encouraged. So, eventually, I think that there's a possibility. But as we've said on this show before, I would also enjoy seeing them do a little bit more of their own original stuff. I was such a fan of Undead. I would happily buy more Undead. I would buy more of their stuff. Heroclix is a unique game in a lot of ways. It never really avails it to take another intellectual property and try to like unsuccessfully hammer it into this mold. WWE was quite successful, and I think Turtles went pretty well too. But for every one of those, there is a lengthy list that really doesn't work. Like Star Trek has never really worked. I'm a big Star Trek fan, but it doesn't really feel right in Heroclix to me.
Yeah.
And there are we could go on, but I don't feel I need to go on Realms and look at all the different times we've seen one Halo and one Street Fighter release, and it doesn't work as often. So I'm cool with more existing properties, but I would be even more cool with some more of their own stuff.
I would love another Pacific Rim set. They made a second movie, guys.
I would love more Undead. More Undead.
I mean, remember we speculated the idea of an animal set? I'd buy an animal set.
Yeah, me too.
So.
Or like a classic adventure set. Like make it like feel like Indiana Jones without intellectual properties, and make it very inspired by old school serials and stuff.
Yeah.
With Jungle Man and this is more animal stuff, like chimps and lions and zebras.
And there's
I'm
lots.
into whatever.
There's lots of fantastical stuff in the video game world too. So there's the possibilities are endless. You know what?
Absolutely.
I would love to see ridiculous models of the WWE Battleground style characters.
Yeah, one they probably should have been. Like WWE, of course, right now is so slow to come out that it's easy for me to say this. But if they were to start releasing more often, then sooner or later they would have to get to the cartoony guys, right?
Yeah.
Like that element of wrestling would have to be reflected at some point, unless they keep doing this very limited, slow release thing. In which case, I'm probably fine with them doing it the way they have been.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next up, Chase Fields. Is there any indication of when we'll see the results of the watch list? Is it worth gambling and picking up any of those figures for play within the next month? Honestly, I think we kind of dabbled in it in the beginning. I feel like ROC Worlds is going to be that place where we see what they do with it, and kind of go from there. And so with ROC Worlds being this coming weekend. I feel like by next week, middle of the week, they'll either kind of look at it and say this is what we're gonna do, or they already have a plan, but they want to make sure that this negative experience exists. You know what I mean? And I know Kenny was for at least the team nationals was also observing as an announcer, so perhaps he's going to be observing in this environment too.
He's there for singles as well.
Well, okay. Well, I didn't play in singles, so I was going off of my own experiences.
Yeah, no, I was just mentioning it.
But yeah,
I think you're probably right.
And Kenny's a rules guy, and the rules guys seem to be in more cahoots with the designers these days. So I feel like those guys will get together and they'll bang out whatever thing that they think might make things work ideally. Or the game designer might be sitting there and saying, it's not what I meant to happen. So, we'll see how things go.
I mean, my answer to that question would be probably not a very helpful one, but it's the most honest one I can give, which is that if you're the sort of person who, if you bought the figure and then they released a watch list errata that in your opinion didn't make it worth playing, and then would be upset about it, then you probably shouldn't take the risk in the first place. Because you can in answer to your question, when will we expect to see something? I expect any time within the next week to 2 weeks. Either we're going to do exactly what Jason said, which is to kind of use the ROC Worlds as a testing ground, or maybe they already know what they want to see and we'll find out tomorrow. But either way, I don't think they're going to be sitting on it for the next 6 months. So expect it in the nearish future, and if you're the sort of person who would be kicking yourself for buying a Chase Widow, if you found out tomorrow that Chase Widow only capped probability control within 6 squares, then don't do it.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, Neil Shazam points out the Star Trek could have worked better with the alternate, should have been the set that we introduced alternate wing conditions.
Yeah, that's a great idea, actually. A really smart point that But in a way, I almost feel like at that point you might as well make a different game. And I've argued this before too. I'm happy. I was happy when WizKids got the ability to make WWE Heroclix, but I would be happier for them to come up with an interesting WWE board gaming experience that used physical miniatures.
They ended up with something. I can't remember what it was, but I think it was like a dice-based rock paper scissors or something like that. I'm not sure. I have to look it up. But they did make a board game, but I don't think it has miniatures.
I own the Gale Force 9 WWE Superstar Showdown, Superstar Shakeup, Superstar something. It's a board game from several years ago made by Gale Force 9, and it's decent. It's a mixed sort of, you use miniatures on a little map as well as having there's a deck building element and a bit of card playing element, and it's simple but it's fun. But it could have been the basis for a larger game because of the way the mechanics worked and the way in which different figures had different card sets, and there was that dice building element in addition to how they moved. If only it had been released as more of an expandable board game as opposed to sort of a set one with 6 figures that all were unfortunately rather similar to one another, it could have had greater legs. But that is what I guess I mean is that you can do some interesting stuff, and they really never have, to my knowledge, made a really good, interesting board game out of wrestling, and I think you could.
Well, it looks like Headlock Paper Scissors is the game, and it looks like it's based around Money in the Bank, but it could just have other things. But 12 playable characters, but it looks like one of those games with like the plastic tab characters. So.
Okay. Interesting.
I'll get my hands on a copy and we'll try it out sometime when we can
let's do that.
Be close to each other again.
Someday.
I miss you, Tom.
Yeah, man.
All right. Conor McGuire, I think we mentioned that figures the way they read right now are going to be the way that ROC does play them. So the watch list won't affect anything for them.
Yeah. That was confirmed quite recently, so if anyone is confused on that point, it's you can be forgiven for it. Yeah. I think it was today that they announced the fact that was what it was. Because as recently as yesterday, they were saying otherwise. So that is hot off the press.
Yeah, they can watch list at this point. If they watch list at all, the characters function as they currently function. So, all right, that about wraps it up for questions. Tom, thank you very much for being here. Thank you guys for watching live. And I want to spend a second and say thank you to our sponsors over at MajesticCCG.com. Check out the website. It's a great place to find out all things Heroclix. It's also where a lot of the great minds in the game, some of the best players, like, as Tom alluded to earlier, Daniel Powell, among others, do write regular articles for the site. So do check it out, and $3 a month gets you access to some of the best content, but they are on top of what's happening in the game. So if there's a Worlds or a Nationals, at the end of Swiss, they had the Nationals roundup and what was winning and what was undefeated at the time. So you got a snapshot of what was actually succeeding at the time. So check out that site. Throw a little love their way if you really want the deep dive stuff. But it's this week. Get some friends on Roll20, guys. It's time to grind. It's time to practice. Get those gauntlets out there and get your team on the map. Practice your strategies, because practice will make your team better. Have a good night, everybody.